Well, good morning again, everybody. This is Rob Godlewski with the Think Small podcast. And today our guest is Ahmed Mustafa with Biospherix. And Biospherix focuses on advanced cell and tissue culture technology. It's a really interesting business. Ahmed is a really interesting guy. So we're just going to dig in and start. Ahmed, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Rob. It's nice to talk to you.
Yeah, it's great talking to you too. So, you've got an incredible backstory. So let's go ahead and dig in and tell us how you got to being the CEO of Biospherix, and we'll dig in to talk about the business specifically after that.
Yeah, well, thank you, Rob. I think my backstory is unique, and it's only because I had fun opportunities. I was blessed by parents that let me do things that it wasn't can I, it's how can I, and they said, well, go figure it out and get it done, and we'll support you. Opened my first business when I was 15. Have had the opportunity to work with many founders. Early in the career with Corning, had the chance to sit with Don Keck. He was a father of a high school classmate. This is the man that invented optical fiber that's literally changed the world. And you know how what a
Wow, you had a front row seat for that experience.
front row seat to the technology that we are all utilizing today. Have been at a small company called CTOX with Jim McKim from Pfizer, talking about in vitro toxicology and moving away from animal models 20 years ago, right? And now at Biospherix, working and picking up the reins from Randy Yearden. Biospherix is 25 years old and has literally very quietly been changing the world. Cell-based research is being done. And I was fortunate enough to connect with a private equity group out of England called the Breeze Group. One of the investors is a friend of mine from my former career at Avantor, and they brought me in. And small companies are not for everybody. They're unique. They don't always have the resources in terms of human capital, financial capital,
That's right.
just operating structure. But these are places I love to be at. And so I was really honored by when the Breeze Group asked, Ahmed, would you come, and pick up the reins from Randy? And I take that very personally because this isn't like some big corporate monstrosity that isn't tied to anyone. This is tied to a man. This is tied to a man that for 25 years dedicated his life to bringing a technology to the market to change the world. And every single morning I wake up with the personal burden and feeling of responsibility to, hey, Ahmed, don't screw this up, right? You've got Randy's 25 years and lives depending on this. And it's really quite a privilege and a pleasure to be here.
That's outstanding. So when did you start at Biospherix?
I joined in April of 24. So just about 2 years.
Gotcha. So you're after a 25-year history, you're new.
Yeah, that's for sure. And it's been quite a pivot. I think, when you've got an owner founder, it's kind of, one way of doing things. When you bring in someone like me who hasn't had 25 years to grow up with a business, I ask a lot of very naive questions. My time horizon's a little shorter because I've got investors that would like to see a return. And, we have done a big cultural change. Randy gave me a great foundation to build on, but we need to pick up the pace. Investors like to see returns. And this market has not been easy. 2025 was a real gut punch in terms of the political economic situation. And this team, Rob, has been incredible. Culture change can be done a variety of ways. One is you will, and that usually reacts with no, I won't, and now you've got a battle, right?
That's
And
right.
it's kind of like negotiating with a 2-year-old at that stage. The approach I prefer is, hey guys, this is a strategy. This is where I want us to go. How do we get there? And not micromanaging. I don't know how to make our equipment. I don't know how to program our computers. I don't know how to install it. Why should I be managing that? And in early 2024, early in my tenure in 2024, we wanted to rebrand. We wanted to represent ourselves to the market. Our webpage had hundreds of pages. We took it down to 12. We wanted to change our color schema. I brought on a marketing director and she said, what colors do you want? I said, I don't care. It's up to you. Right. And literally I walked away and she came up with a portfolio. And the only answer you can give is that I love them. I may not like them at all, but you've turned over the decision rights to a capable individual, let them do it. And when we look at the refreshed product, I went to the first meeting. It was really funny. I sat there in the meeting saying, well, we're going to change the way they look and feel and blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the meeting, I said, I don't know how to do any of this. And frankly, I don't need to be in this meeting. So I took one of our senior managers. I said, this is now your project. And I didn't attend another meeting until they had the final proposal done. And then we made a few edits and we launched it. And I think that kind of comfort with the team, appreciating their knowledge and expertise, and acknowledging I'm not the guy to give all the answers. If I have to give all the answers, I'm going to be exhausted. And it's been a really wonderful experience. The team here at Biospherix has been open to accepting responsibility. They've been open to taking decision rights, and I've been okay with letting them make the decisions. And it's been a lot of fun.
That's really great to hear. I think some other small businesses out there can really learn from that, right? I learned very early in my career that you know what, just hire good people and get out of their way.
Exactly.
Let them do their jobs.
That's why you got them, right?
That's right. Exactly. That's why I hired them in the first place.
Yep.
So tell me, Ahmed, about what the business's purpose was. What does it set out to do when it got started, and how are you, ramping up that message and that technology? Because now, like you said, you've got investors to report to and drive results for. So
the vision hasn't changed. So one of the things I want to do is preserve the original mission of the product. So Randy coined a term called cytocentric, and the whole philosophy we're built on is that we want to focus on the cell. So cyto being the cell, centric focus. Yep. And so at a macro level, if I could explain, let's say we're working on a chemo drug for cancer. And we have our target cells in an incubator at 37 degrees C and no oxygen. Let's say their tumors are typically hypoxic, so 0 degrees oxygen. And then I do the work. So I take them out of the incubator, I drop them on my lab bench. Now I'm at 20 degrees C and 20% oxygen, and I dose them. And the cells die. Did they die because of chemo? Did they die because they were hypothermic or because they were hyperoxic? We don't know. All we know is they died. Mm-hmm. We check the box and we move it up the process, right? So the whole vision I think Randy started with was, let's focus on the cells and always keep them in their optimal environment so that we can get better quality research data that's more reproducible. This is really about quality of results and accuracy, right? So you and I are at 37 degrees C. Our body typically, for most of our cells, uses 4% of the oxygen in the environment. Then why am I doing research at 20 degrees C and 20% oxygen? It's actually an irrational thought to me. And then, one of the other discoveries Randy came up with later was in a clean room, in a traditional clean room or a biosafety cabinet, the dirtiest contaminant is the individual. It's the technician entering that room, right? Mm-hmm. We have a customer that I asked last year, of the 5 contaminations they had, did they know what they were? And all 5 were technician DNA, right? In the clean room, it was the technicians that contaminated the patient samples. And so Randy said, let's isolate that, the technician from the cell world. So we come in through a laminar flow hood, like a biosafety cabinet. We do all the cleaning. Then once you pass through our first chamber, the cells are always in their optimal environment. The technician is outside that. You're working through gloves. But the aseptic nature and the low relative humidity prevents bacteria growth. You don't have to use antibiotics or any harmful cleaning agents that would potentially contaminate or kill your cells. And so we're keeping that. What we're doing, though, is we're talking about it more. We're partnering with other collaborating companies like Cellbox and other organizations to get the word out, right? One thing I have learned many years ago is small companies can't do it by themselves. There is strength in numbers, and there is strength in collaboration and partnerships. Randy, many years ago, joined something called the Wake Forest Institute of Regenerative Medicine in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And, when I joined in early 24, we had a system and a test bed. It wasn't being fully utilized. We partnered with their marketing arm. And now you've got a free test bed that people are using every week to come in and develop protocols and processes. And so it's that kind of, being in a target-rich environment, collaborating with companies nearby, leveraging the relationships through organizations like the Wake Forest Institute of Regenerative Medicine and the Piedmont Triangle regenerative medicine engine, which is the National Science Foundation program. You know, that is how we're going to be successful. It will never be on our own. And so our pivot was, you know, we had a great product, we have a great message, we have a great solution. Now go tell the world. And we're telling the world in collaboration and with others.
That's awesome. And pivoting, I think is a key topic for our podcast audience, right? When you're confronted with a business challenge, how do you pivot and how do you manage your team and navigate your team through that change? So dig into that a little bit more, if you would, Ahmed.
Well, I think, you know, you have a couple of choices, right? You can always do the same thing you've done day in and day out, and usually the results will be the same or worse, right? That's a fact. We call it evolution, if you believe in the theory. And so the alternative
I
is,
call that the definition of insanity.
and yes, Mr. Einstein may agree with you. And so the notion is that you always have to be evolving. You have to understand what the market wants. You have to understand the market conditions, and you have to be flexible. And it's not about getting perfect data and having all the answers. I think, you know, many leaders and friends of mine get into analysis paralysis. Well, give me the data. Why should I launch a new product? Why should I go into a new market? Well, the data doesn't exist. So then they just stand flat-footed and the world goes by, right? I am,
Right.
and maybe to my detriment, and certainly to my team's frustration some days, I'm an 80% guy. If it looks good, if it smells good, and if we've got enough data to say, yeah, it's probably not a terrible idea, let's go try. In 2025, in the first 6 months, we did 6 new product launches. For a team of 27, that's amazing. We entered 3 new markets. We're getting ready to go into another market this year. We opened a whole new center for cytocentric technology. All of that happens based on, yep, it makes sense. Yes, we think there's a market need. Now, it won't always work. Some of them will fall away and you'll say, all right, well, failed experiment. But had we stood still, we may not have gotten out of 2025. It was really a tough year. And so by being able to go fish in more ponds and broaden our revenue opportunities, we pulled through 2025 and we're poised to do pretty well in 26. So pivoting, you can call it agility, you can call it pivoting, you can call it evolution, whatever the word, you know, tomato, tomato, I don't care. But the reality is, if you expect different results by doing the same thing day in and day out, you're living in a fool's world, right? You've got to be able to do it. And if you don't know how to do it, that's where partnerships with people like you and your team, Rob, come into play. Everyone may not know how to pivot. Everyone may not know, hey, do I go left, right, or center? And so you get someone, you know, like Chief Outsiders and folks like you and your team and say, guys, we don't know where to go. We know we've got to go somewhere. Could you help us understand, do we go left, right, or center? And then you can bring outside resources. You can invest time that smaller companies may not have, and then help them change their direction. But if you do not do something, somebody else around you will, and eventually you'll be out of business. That is a fact.
Absolutely. And it doesn't matter where the cause of the pivot comes from, right? Ahmed, you were faced with some governmental restrictions or reduced funding. And
Yeah.
so nobody, I think everybody on your team realizes that nobody's to blame for that, but you just need to figure out a different way. And I love your approach about not having all the data and all the facts before you try something, right? I like to use the phrase, perfect is the enemy of good enough.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
80% of the way there is probably going to get you into those new markets or help you develop that new product faster, that new service faster. So I love that approach. From a business that's very different from my experience,
Yeah.
but the approaches can be the same.
It's very important. And, as you and I spoke a few days ago, I was trained as a pilot, a paramedic, and a fireman. And in all 3 of those roles, if you're always waiting for perfect data, somebody will die. That's the answer, right? And when you really think about it, you cannot have any higher stakes than somebody on the floor for reasons you don't know. You don't have a CT scanner, you don't have all kinds of lab equipment. You've got your mind, your training, and limited equipment, and you've got to make life and death decisions in minutes because someone's brain is not getting the oxygen they need. And And once you start to get some response, you then have to adapt and pivot. And this is where I think, I often tell people, in my aviation and maritime maps that I use, I always write in pencil because the destination doesn't change, but the path to get there will, right? And so this is where the agility and the ability to rely on your team and outside resources like Chief Outsider is absolutely vital because every once in a while, especially in small organizations, you sometimes need a gut check. Hey, does this make sense? Does this sound right? And even a quick call with somebody who knows your business and your vision can say, boy, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, or yeah, that's brilliant, run fast. And so, I think collaborations with partners like Chief Outsiders and others that I've had, can prove invaluable because once you start moving forward, sometimes you put your blinders on and you sometimes need somebody to say, hey, you know what? Maybe we should go left instead of straight because there's a cliff coming.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And in your experience, being a paramedic and a pilot, you had to be trained in not dealing with 100% of the facts to make that very immediate decision. I'm sure not everybody in our audience has the same training and background, but it certainly is very sound advice for moving things forward. You could not have introduced 6 new products if you didn't approach your business that way.
No, that's
Um,
true. That's true. We'd still be deliberating a year later which one to go forward with.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So tell me about the current status of your business and where you want to take the business in the near future. Obviously, your technology approach to sell research is pretty time based. I don't think you have the luxury of developing a 5 or 10 year plan. So
No,
tell
but I
me a
got
little bit
one. It's
about
in it's
that.
in my pocket. I think about it.
Yeah.
It's there. But the short term is when I joined Biospherix, we were really in 3 markets. We did cell-based research, we
Okay.
did clinical work with cells. So, a variety of different applications. People think of CAR T and CRISPR and things like that, a little bit earlier type of stuff. And then we did some in vivo space. And those were really our 3 biggest markets. We have added education. So, you need to develop a workforce. My understanding is somewhere around age 5 or 6, kids have decided a career direction, not high school and not college. So we are developing products for middle school and high school so people can get their hands in ex vivo systems and learn the tactile skills of working in glove box situations. We're partnering with Carolina University and other schools to develop workforce development projects. We've got 4 7-week syllabi developed to take someone from off the street to being ready to intern at a biotech company. We've partnered with a company called Biotility in Florida to develop a national standard for working in closed environments, modular environments like ours. So now people can test out for a credential. So we did the education part. We've expanded the in vivo segment. We are now developing 2 locations, one in New York and one in North Carolina, called Centers for Cytocentric Technology. And the whole idea is they will be working in ex vivo systems and learning the difference of why working in a closed controlled environment versus on a lab bench can make a difference. And in the next few months, we will be launching the first human cell line that has never touched the environment. So it will always
Wow.
have been in the correct physiologic oxygen levels as if in a living human. And our preliminary data shows they're much more robust. And if you're really going to use them in the correct atmosphere, you will get more relevant data. That's a fact. There's no arguing that. And so, when I look to 26, 27, 28, we're going to be, I think, less new products and more chasing the products that we've developed and, getting ourselves established, getting our presence in North Carolina up and running. And then the future will tell us where to go. I foresee, Rob, in the next 12 to 18 months, us putting together a solution to do distributed manufacturing, getting closer to the point of patient care. So, for example, you need some cell-based treatment today. Let's talk about for solid tumors or a CAR T solution, you're going to a major metro area. Well, if I live in upstate New York by the Canadian border, I may make a decision that says I'm unwilling to leave my family to go get this treatment in New York or Florida or Texas. And so I'm not going to get it. I choose to not take the treatment. I'm not okay with that. As a paramedic, I want everyone to have
Mhm.
access to healthcare, regardless of your geographic location. And so think about dialysis centers. 30 years ago, you had to go to the hospital. Now you can go to every neighborhood. Is a dialysis center. Why can we
That's
not
right.
develop the same solution for cell and gene therapy? And the answer is there's no reason not to. So we're going to. And so we're pulling our partners together. We're getting some consultants on board, and we're going to develop a solution that whether you're in Rochester, New York, or Pulaski, New York, or Corning, New York, or rural Minnesota, you have access to the same life-saving treatments that you would in any major metro area. And that I would say will take us into our next 3 to 5 years. And after that, we'll have to talk again. I'll tell you where we're going to go.
I love that. But focusing on the idea of the first time, and I'm not a scientist, so I'm going to be using the wrong phrasings here, Ahmed. Please forgive me. But essentially eliminating the variables that drive certain outcomes. You're the first company to do this in a cell environment, meaning the temperature or the other variables. But that just makes sense to me, right? If you want good, clean outcomes with clean data, eliminate the variables and only focus on one.
Yeah, and I think, so I would say we aren't the first company to do it. We're the first one to put it all together. So there've always been aseptic environments, right? Clean rooms,
Correct.
biosafety cabinets, they've existed, but they don't control the environment. There have been incubators and CO2 incubators. They control the environment, but not the aseptic nature. I think Randy and Biospherix, we have put them all together into one solution. And the other thing that we have done is we don't connect to infrastructure. So our systems are mobile, they're on wheels. And I don't mean
Uh,
portable, so they're not like you're changing them every day. But when you put an ex vivo system in your lab, um, and your lab expands, you want to reconfigure the system, you can do it. You can take it with you. It's your asset. When you build a clean room, it is your landlord's asset. It is always a clean room. It can only be a clean room. And so I think what Biospherix has done, and this was Randy's vision, was build a system that meets your needs today, can scale with your needs in the future. And if you outgrow your place, you can take it with you. We have a story of a customer prior to my arrival that was kind of landlocked in their location, but the adjacent space was a parking garage, and they literally blew the wall down, sheetrocked in the parking garage, slid the ex vivo in, and were able to continue doing work. And so, when we think about the current economic climate in the United States and the uncertainty around it, every dollar you have matters more now than it ever did, and how you spend it. So you have a choice. I go invest millions of dollars in a clean room infrastructure. HVAC is always running. I've got to spend tens of thousands of dollars per technician gowning and garbing and adding environmental waste. Or I can put in a biospheric system that instead of years takes months, that training takes days instead of months for the technician. It's my asset. I can take it with me, and I can always make sure that the work I'm doing is in an aseptic environment focused on the cells. It is a big change, and I think that's the message we're going to spend 2026 telling everybody about.
that's amazing. Our work is focused on helping our clients go from an operationally focused approach to their business to a market focused approach to their business. And Ahmed, you're there. You're I I, it's a huge compliment to say that you're thinking about the customer who's receiving this medical treatment probably first, and along with your technological solution to cell research, which is amazing. But being a market focused organization, that's in your DNA is going to allow you to experience that growth. So I'm very confident you're on your way.
Well,
Um,
thank you. And I think, A message to share with our listeners
Mhm.
is that don't feel the need to do it on your own, right? There
Yeah.
are partners like Chief Outsiders. You've got the ability to have some fractional leaders or consultative, however you want to engage. But I have the benefit of some great board members at the Breeze level. I've got, a colleague, one of our investors here in the US, I can pick up the phone and call. I've got, a Rolodex that is, 30 years in the making. But if you're a startup and if you're coming from the research side and you're trying to make a business of a product, or you've got a product and you want to scale it or move it to different markets and you don't know where to go, this is where phone a friend makes a difference, and companies like Chief Outsiders and organizations and your team can make a difference. It will give you the ability to have a sounding board. It will give you resources to say, hey, could you go get me some data so I can at least develop a plan? It will give you a whole variety of depth that you may not start with that you'll get over time. And so I really think, a message people should take away is if you're small and you're starting, get experts, call friends,
Yeah.
use resources like you, Rob, so that you learn from others' mistakes and you don't have to make them yourselves.
Exactly. Well, I certainly appreciate the shout outs, Ahmed. It's very nice of you. But yes, I totally agree. And whether it's us or somebody else, it's whether it's an operationally focused advisor or a financial, like a CFO type of advisor that can help you navigate the financial ins and outs of your business as you move forward, as you experience growth. You got to get other opinions. Um,
Yeah.
and failing fast is another key message that I think is really important. And you're embracing that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
It's it's tough. It's not an easy thing to do. But I remind people, at least my understanding is the reason it's Heinz 57 is there were 56 failed recipes before they got it right. And
that's right.
and that's the reason behind it is everything isn't going to taste right the first time and it won't suit every palate. But you can't just stop and say, well, I'm not good at it. Keep reinventing and eventually you'll hit it. And it worked for Heinz, right?
Heinz 57 is a great example. Another one I love is the 3M Post-it note was a mistake.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody came up with an adhesive that didn't stick.
Yep. Yep. And, I think, in my days at Corning, I had the privilege of walking around the research and development labs as a youngster. My dad was well connected and, Corning was a very, very open community. And, you would have dinner with scientists that were inventing catalytic converters and nose cone tiles and all kinds of crazy stuff and just hanging out with them. And,
Yeah,
you know, to have that capability and the willingness to say, well, there's not an application for it. Optical fiber took more than a decade before it worked for
Mhm.
Corning at British Telecom. British Telecom, my understanding was said, this is what we want to do. How do we do it? And it came to the scientists at Corning, and it took a long, long time. Sometimes you need that patience, but every company can't afford that. And if Corning had said early on, well, sorry, after 3 years it doesn't work, we may not be having this conversation the way we're having it today, right?
That's
But
very true.
instead, Mr. Houghton said, no, no, we are going to figure it out, and I've got the right people to do it. So let those people do what they want to do. But then you've got other people have to be generating revenue and bringing in income.
Mhm.
And so it's that fine balance, right? Look to new markets, sustain your current markets, and keep evolving because that's the only way we survive, especially little companies.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ahmed, this has been just a tremendous opportunity to speak with you, learn a little bit more about Biospherix and the bright future ahead for you. Um, any last words of advice for our podcast audience before we sign off?
No, Rob, thank you. I really appreciate the time and I love the conversation. And if you're a small company and you're starting out, please pick up the phone, chat with a group like Chief Outsiders, and don't go it on your own. It makes for very long days. You can accelerate your success with the right partner. I'll close with that.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, my friend.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Again, this is Ahmed Mustafa with Biospherix. Thanks again for your time today, Ahmed.
Yep. You're welcome.